Peace, peace, family. It's your girl, Morgan Renee Myers, tuning in for another reading. We are back on the book Chemical Dependency and the African American Counseling Strategies and Community Issues by Brother Peter Bell. We read the first chapter and now we're on chapter 2. I left my highlighter, but we're going to make do. Got my lemon water. And I'm just really interested in this topic and other topics concerning health. One, because I'm surrounded by a multitude of health issues with people in my family and close vicinity that I love, within myself, just things I need to work on and improve. And so it's just an important topic. And so I'm going to continue to talk about it and learn from it and do better. So chapter 2, culture's impact on the incidence of alcohol and other drug abuse. The rate of chemical addiction in minority groups appears to be largely determined by how clear-cut the cultural rules are regarding chemical use. Some of the fastest growing rates of addiction are among groups of people who are experiencing rapid cultural dislocation due to technological advances or westernization. But when the role of the family remains primary, these groups may successfully resist an increase in chemical addiction. When cultural dislocation and technological advances are also accompanied by a breakdown in the family, people appear to be at a higher risk for developing serious alcohol and other drug abuse problems. Peace, DOY Creation 7. I'm on Instagram and Facebook tonight. Hey, Brother John Snow. Hey, Sister Lenny. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? All right. So what that sounded like to me, tomorrow's Family Friday, so this is right on point. What this sounded like to me is that based on our environment and things that we are going through is going to be predicative enough of whether or not we end up engaging in risky behaviors like drug abuse or alcoholism. So that's what I got from that chunk. So 6 important questions concerning drug use. There are 6 questions that all cultures, communities, families, and individuals answer in one form or another. When these questions get answered clearly, there tend to be fewer alcohol and other drug problems. Not King Johnson, boy. Okay, King, my bad. Y'all silly. Woo, child. All right, I needed that laugh. When these questions get answered clearly, there tend to be fewer alcohol and other drug problems. What is common to groups of people with low rates of chemical abuse? American Indians 200 years ago, or Orthodox Jews and Mormons currently, are very clear cultural rules regarding alcohol or other drug use. Number 1, what chemicals are legitimate to use? In American society, there has been a breakdown in rules regarding alcohol and other drugs. The 60s ushered in an era of challenge to old rules and authority. Among those things challenged, especially by young people, was the taboo on all drugs except alcohol. Marijuana became popular among college students who rejected their parents' assumption that alcohol was the only acceptable recreational drug. Marijuana, while still illegal, enjoys a generally more acceptable status than other drugs. Yeah, because it don't be doing all that stuff that opioid, piece of kilo fat, that opioid and crack and heroin, all that don't be doing what we do. But it is something to look at, especially with the chemicals they probably put in this weed today, child. If it ain't homegrown, it probably ain't that good for consumption either. Although we do know that marijuana or hemp does have valuable properties in it. Thanks for all the compliments. Thanks, Casey girl. All right. So marijuana, while still illegal, enjoys a generally more acceptable status than other drugs. When there is a collapse of clear taboos on a drug that tends to facilitate its abuse. What kind of sentence is that? Hold on. Marijuana, while still illegal, enjoys a generally more acceptable status than other drugs. When there is a collapse of clear taboos on a drug that tends to facilitate its abuse. You don't start a sentence like that. What are you leading at? What's the rest of the sentence? When there is a collapse of clear taboos on a drug that tends to facilitate its abuse. Moving on. The breakdown of social taboos regarding drugs has been followed by efforts to legalize them. Advocates for this approach maintain that legalizing all drugs will eliminate the mega-dollar criminal industry that currently manufactures and distributes them. When a chemical substance is legalized or otherwise culturally legitimized, more people will use it. When more people use it, more will also become abusers and addicted, thereby causing harm to themselves, their family, and to society. There's already enough crime, domestic violence, divorce, unemployment, and illiteracy with the one legal chemical, alcohol. Can society afford to legalize and therefore expand the use of other psychoactive substances? Shall know. Advocates of legalization make the false assumption that all chemicals have the same addictive potential. While only 1 in 10 people may use alcohol in excess, a far greater percentage of crack users become dependent on this highly addictive substance. Our country will be well served if the field of chemical dependency followed the lead of current anti-smoking efforts. We are observing the delegitimization of tobacco in our society. We see the signs literally all around us. They include no smoking sections in restaurants. This book is old. Y'all remember when they was doing that, no smoking sections, and there were certain sections you could smoke in. Now we don't have it at all. So this was written in copyright 1990, first published in August 1990. I wasn't even born. I was born December 1990. So wow. Okay, so there's so they include no smoking sections in restaurants, a smoking ban on most airline flights, no smoking hotel rooms, and a ban on tobacco ads on radio and television. Few among us now associate tobacco use with glamour. Number 2, remember he's talking about 6 important questions concerning drug use. So this question was for the people that are fighting for the legalization of more harmful substances just so that people can be free to do what they want. Is that beneficial to us as a culture and a society? Because we already can't handle the one thing that is legal, alcohol. We out here, getting all kind of wrecks, getting DWIs, harming ourselves, harming other people. It's probably affecting, how we parent, how we, interact with people in our life. So can we really afford to have other drugs legalized? I don't know, y'all. I think that might be enough, to be honest. Number 2, has the culture, community, or family established a context for chemical use? When is it legitimate to use alcohol and other drugs? Well, since you asked, when we trying to have a little party and we trying to turn up. Where is it legitimate to use alcohol and other drugs? In the crib, at the house. And you got to set rules like can't nobody leave, especially if you too lit. Like we got to have, bedrooms and mattresses and air mattresses set up. We be a little reckless with it. Be having parties and letting people dip. Like we got to have, we be stressed. America is stressful as hell. It's a little getaway. We know it. Is it the healthiest? No. But if we just home, I do find it to be problematic when, in my past life, when I used to be, child. It was a little problematic being out drinking around a whole bunch of strangers. Because you know how the chemicals in your body and it's making you think and want to do and touch and feel and do stuff. It's just not necessary to be out amongst a bunch of strangers. But if I'm around people I know, love, and trust, and we just want to vibe and have a little... I got a homegirl. She makes me little elderberry concoctions with some what's whole tequila or something like that, or like a little, so that I can still kind of feel healthy but still be getting my okay. We just gotta let it go. Well, in the meantime, I'm just answering the questions. When is it legitimate to use alcohol and other drugs? Where is it legitimate to use alcohol and other drugs? What behaviors should we tolerate from those who use alcohol and other drugs? Now that's a good one, because some of the things that different things do different things for different people. So for you might be the happy joint. Anything I take is like, it make me. Some people, they get real angry, they get real anxious, they become violent. It does not do the same thing for everybody. So I guess that's on a case-by-case behavior. But what behavior should we tolerate from those who use alcohol and other drugs? Not the crazy behavior. And if they got that kind of behavior, then we know not to let them drink that much or drink at all. They won't be invited to the party. Do that on your own time. The clearer the answers to these questions, the fewer alcohol and other drug problems a society we have. Some people can't hold their liquor. Child, clarity, no, they sure can't. I used to be one that said people couldn't. I wasn't like crazy with it, but I just end up sleep somewhere or end up doing something I ain't had no business. So, or Y'all know I talk about this. I'm very transparent too. I have a poem in my book entitled Spirits. Let's see, get horny. Right. Let me see if I can remember the poem real quick. It's called Spirits. When I'm drunk, a spirit takes over me, controlling me, making me do things I don't want to do. I do want to, that I should just let be. Sober, I'm a freak. So when intoxicated, I feel even more elated to let my inner freak be free. Hormonal release. How long have I known you, or did we just meet? Decisions. But I'm grown, so I know what's best for me. My flesh speaks so loudly, volumes as I walk across the room, all eyes on me. Males and females trying to get a peek at my peach. I'm intrigued that you're into me. But now that you're entering me, I can see pleasure and ecstasy, but I also see you shouldn't have woken up next to me. Someone tell me, how many drinks did I have? Did it take for me to be bad? Because I never made love. I just picked and choose and fuck. I mean, who doesn't love getting nuts? I'm nuts. I'm wild, erotic, exotic. Freak was what they wanted, so freak was what I was. I took that line from Jill Scott, nothing is for nothing, because sometimes after nutting with a nobody whose body I borrowed, I feel like nothing. Numb to it all. The pleasure, the pain, the fall, and pleasure, willpower, and self-control. I'm tired of putting celibacy on hold so I can have one last goal, but who knows when this will be my last day here. And I fear the biggest thing that'll take me out of here. I always forget the end of it. I fear the one thing that I'm enamored with the most will be the one thing that takes me out of here. I swear it's hard trying to find your balance between holding your liquor and lips, smooth talking, beautiful beings, and hips being navigated like captains of a ship. Sometimes I slip. Okay, so that was called Spirits, and that's just my interpretation. That question kind of made me think, what behavior should we tolerate from those who use alcohol and other drugs? Because yes, alcohol does different things for different people, and for me, it would turn me on, and I'd be ready to go hit some. And that wasn't always the best choice to be making. Point blank, period. Yeah, I'm grown. We can do what we want, but it was not always wise decisions. And also, alcoholism or consuming too much, not controlling my liquor, as Brother Clarity said, had me in some dangerous situations. That was just, a fragment of some things, but there were some situations that could have definitely been avoided. And I speak on this when I talk about, different things, violations and things that women go through. We don't want to victim blame, and we sometimes are not wanting to be open about our situation because, we don't want to just the pain, the memories, and all this and that. But I be expressive about mine because it's healing for me, and hopefully to help somebody else. That I intentionally put myself in situations that I could have avoided, or I could have been wiser in. Had I not been consuming as much alcohol as I was in some of these situations, I'm absolutely 100% sure I wouldn't end up in some of the situations I ended up in that were harmful to me. So that's just being transparent and mindful and doing better. Now that I have wisdom, I've learned that lesson a number of times, so I don't need to go to or experience it again. And so my book, The Celibacy Chronicles, is actually to kind of forelay some of those stories so that, hopefully some young girl or young woman or young man can, avoid some unnecessary hurt. That somebody can get some healing from it, that, a grandmother or uncle or auntie or somebody that get it can, share it with somebody or recollect their own experience and do they work. So the book is on Amazon, The Celibacy Chronicles, and the audio book is on Dystopia, but I'll post all that at another time. I post it all the time. So anyways, moving on. The clearer answers to these questions, the fewer alcohol and other drug problems a society will have. Historically, there are 3 culturally established reasons for the use of any mood-altering chemical. The first is ritualistic or ceremonial. They do say something sometimes about pouring spirits to the ancestors. Why do we pour out liquor when people die? The first is ritualistic or ceremonial, usually tied to religious rites or worship. The second is for medicinal purpose. The third is for festive celebratory occasions. Today, American culture has validated a number of new reasons for alcohol and other drug use. One is the use of alcohol and other drugs as a social lubricant to facilitate camaraderie, to help people relax and enjoy themselves. Yes, didn't I say that earlier? they may have grown out of, but it is not the same as the festive occasions previously referred to. Festive or celebratory occasions, such as when the harvest is in, traditionally occur only once or a few times a year. But now situations where alcohol and other drugs are used as soap or lubrications can happen daily. Yeah, I made it through the workday without killing somebody. Let me have a drink. I didn't beat these kids. They still alive. Let me have a drink. So-and-so graduated. So-and-so had a birthday. So-and-so started a business. So-and-so got their disability. So-and-so, let me drink. So I do see what it's saying, that the intentionality practices were different way back when. A lot of things that we do now do not really coincide with how we lived before. Which is something to note, because some things I think were very beneficial for us. I think I'm about to take this off, honey. Regarding the issues of where chemicals should be used and what behavior should be tolerated when under the influence, American society seems to be going in two different directions simultaneously. On the positive side, driving while under the influence is decreasingly tolerated, as are crimes such as domestic violence. On the negative side, there has been such a breakdown of order in some inner city neighborhoods that residents must fight to establish drug-free zones. The breakdown of old rules regarding use is nowhere more apparent than in our schools. Using or being under the influence of drugs is technically promoted in schools, but practically it is often tolerated because the magnitude of the problem is far greater than the staff can handle. This sends confusing messages to young people. They are told that use is forbidden in school, but they see many of their peers clearly under the influence of drugs and getting by with it. 3. Are there cultural institutions that can effectively establish and communicate alcohol and other drug use rules? This is where American culture has changed the most. Historically, there were 3 institutions that established chemical use and abuse rules. A, religious leaders, B, the family, and C, the state. While these 3 groups continue to exert some influence, there is a strong counterforce, the liquor industry, that seeks to legitimize alcohol consumption and establish norms regarding alcohol use. The liquor industry does this through its excessive marketing efforts, $1.2 billion per year, and this was back in 1990, that include massive ad campaigns specifically targeting Black people. The liquor industry disproportionately targets Blacks and other minorities in marketing campaigns. Rarely is there a Black cultural or musical event that does not have the liquor or tobacco industry as its major sponsor. The liquor industry argues that these ads are to ensure brand loyalty, not to increase competition. We must keep in mind, however, that 10% of our nation's population who use alcohol drink 50% of all alcohol consumed in the United States. The federal government estimates that if every drinker in the United States drank the maximum amount identified for a moderate drinker, there will be a 40% reduction in alcohol consumption in this country. Without problem drinkers and alcoholics, much of the liquor industry will be out of business. Federal government studies indicate that if an individual does not start drinking by his or her mid-20s, that person is not likely to start drinking at all. This creates a strong incentive for the liquor industry to market its products toward the nation's youth, who are disproportionately minors. In marketing booze to Blacks, George Hacker, Ronald Collins, and Michael Jacobson described the concentrated efforts by the liquor industry to target Black people. They cite studies that show A, Blacks pay more attention to advertising because we always on the damn TV and watching stuff. Turn that stuff off sometime. It's still gonna be there, but you ain't gotta be consumed by it. Blacks pay more attention to advertising. Black consumers respond more readily to advertising. We're an emotional-based people. We see something we want, we gonna get. C, Blacks watch more television than whites. Why is that? Who, child? That's a whole conversation. We really gotta manage our time better. Now, granted, there are some things that, because there's really no excuses. I was about to say, but they have access to this. Yeah, they might, but we also have the same amount of time in the day as them. So whereas they may own some of these industries, they may get generational wealth passed down to them. They may have access to certain opportunities. They may be able to be ahead of the game. We are not completely helpless. A lot of us have resources out here. Some of us have family with land. We could learn how to get back into agriculture and not feel like slavery. You work on your own time, and it'd be hard work work, but you do what you got to do, and we could produce stuff and be selling our produce as a form of income. That's just one example, but there are plenty other things we could be doing with our time. I'm not saying going into business is for everybody, because it's not. But we could be utilizing this time to build on some skills, to figure out our purpose, to not just spend it being stressed, not just spend it going to work, paying bills, and cussing people out. That's not what it's about. And also not just sitting around watching TV and being on social media all day. At some point, we have to hold ourselves accountable for what we're doing with our time. Why is it that we're watching so much TV? That's how they know that they can market to us more specifically, because they know we're going to be the ones to see the commercials. People that out here and got goals and got purpose ain't sitting around watching what everybody else doing. They out creating their own lifestyle. Is that true about the commercials? Well, Keela Faye, I'm just reading what the books say. I haven't done any thorough research, so who knows? This was also written in 1990, but I wouldn't put it past it not being true, because I do understand how the tell-lie vision operates, and that we, as Black folk, are the end product of a lot of these advertisements and how they go about doing it. I do believe in that. So they cite studies that show A, Blacks pay more attention to advertising, B, Black customers respond more readily to advertising, and C, Blacks watch more television than whites. Liquor industry efforts targeted at Blacks include inner city billboards. How many times you gonna roll by and see a Bud Light or a Natural Light or a Lime Marita or something? That stuff's getting into your subconscious. You start saying, oh, I want a little Lime Marita tonight. I know it because it doesn't happen to me. And I know that's why I'm going. Oh, I seen that bill. Not consciously thinking that, but then the next day I'm like, oh. And the last 2 times I've done that and I've not like really cared for or felt like I needed it or had a positive experience after drinking it, it just was something to do. I'm like, why did I even? And then the next day I'm like, subconsciously it made me want to go do that. So you got inner city billboards, ads in Black oriented magazines, Jet magazine, whatever, Ebony, whatever. Television commercials that make use of Black athletes to endorse the product, sponsorship of rock concerts and other musical events. The liquor industry associates equality and Black pride with its products. Black drinkers are often portrayed as sophisticated, upscale members of society. The trend is to link Black drinkers with financial success. Many Black-oriented magazines are heavily dependent on liquor ads for revenue, and there are few articles in these magazines or in general addressing the problem of alcoholism in the Black community. Akila Faye said, you on point about the goals. Also with gardening, check out Growing Together on Facebook. Thank you, sis. Probably not. I'm in a few gardening groups. Them groups, it'd be too much for me. It may be something I check out, but I don't know. It's just too much. Facebook is too much. I got 2 separate accounts, 2 phones. I can't. And I'm learning I have actual people in my life and in my city that helped me with gardening. My whole backyard is garden. My last roommate was into horticulture. He was taking a class. So I'm learning a lot. I'm learning from, some of the resources I have. I just personally cannot get too caught up in a lot of these groups. It's just too much for me. Ciao. All right. So, wow, that's amazing that they can use us to advertise and get our money, but then we're not addressing how these same products end up being beneficial for us. Swahili proof, Professor Prof. Hey. Take some pics and share in the group. No, Akila, stop trying to force me to get in this group, girl. I said thank you now. I'm in enough groups. I ain't gonna remember to do all that. I got stuff to do. All right, so the saturation of advertising in the Black community, as well as the evidence that Black people respond more readily to advertising, is more than a little disquieting. Number 4, are there clear cultural, community, or family systems of accountability? 2 set factors tend to motivate change. The first set of factors include care, love, and concern, which are strong, positive motivations for change. The second set of factors are consequences and accountability. The effectiveness of counselors, for example, is often determined by how well they integrate care and concern on one hand with consequences and accountability on the other. The glue that holds all the factors factors together is that they are consistently applied. In many states, there is a patchwork system of accountability for chemical use and abuse. The trend appears to be improving as evidenced by tougher DWI laws, tougher drug law enforcement, and stiffening penalties for drug possession and sales. But lack of consistency can present major problems in minority communities where the external system of accountability, police, social workers, and the judicial system is not fully trusted, and the internal systems of accountability are unevenly developed. The family is the clearest example of internal accountability. Civic, neighborhood, and religious groups are other examples of internal accountability. Historically, the extended family also played a significant role in monitoring and controlling inappropriate behavior. That reminds me of how, like you could go to school or you could be doing something in the neighborhood and somebody else could whoop you or tell your mom, or they could tell you to cut it out and you had more respect to listen to them. That's what that extended type of family. Nowadays, it's like everybody need to mind their business. You don't say nothing to my child. Everybody parent in their own ways or lack thereof. And therefore, that's why I hate the saying, let me do whatever. Everybody just need to mind their business. As long as they ain't affecting you, don't worry about it. Some of the things that you do or are not doing do end up affecting me. And my best example that I use is when I worked in the school system. You could tell whose parents were not paying attention and showing love and time and attention with them kids. Because they would come to school and some of them would be acting out because they wanted attention. And that disrupts the class and the space for everybody else. It makes me have to take set time aside to get this child and their behavior together because they're not receiving that at home. And so they want all that attention from you. And it's like, look. So we need to bring that village mentality back, man. We've really got away from a lot of effective things for the sake of independency and individualism. And it's harming us. So civic, neighborhood, and religious group, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so historically, the extended family has also played a significant role in monitoring and controlling inappropriate behavior. As a result of the distrust of the external systems of accountability, many individuals have asked the Black community to develop internal systems of accountability. For the most part, this has not happened. It is important to both sensitize the external systems of accountability to the needs of minority communities and also to build up internal systems of accountability. The more functional the internal systems of accountability are, the fewer external systems of accountability will be needed. All right, so creating staple Black communities. Minority communities can no longer survive with as few internal systems of accountability as presently exist. The role of Black middle-class people in the Black community is changing. In the past, as a result of segregation, the Black middle class was forced to live in close proximity with poorer, less educated Black people who could benefit from their counsel and modeling of success. Today, middle-class Black people often live apart from poorer Blacks. The community stabilizing and leadership roles of middle-class Black people in the past does not exist in Black communities today. In addition, large segments of the Black community question the legitimacy of middle-class goals and aspirations. The influence of indigenous meditating institutions such as the church, which historically provided stability in addition to counseling and social services, have been undermined and made less relevant. Today, social services are provided primarily by the government and private social service agencies. The leadership void created by the departure of the Black middle class and the reduced influence of the church is being filled in many inner city communities by drug dealers, gangs, and pimps. They currently provide much of the role modeling and employment opportunities in Black communities. When an individual is concerned about the alcohol or other drug use of a family member, there is frequently little trust in outside resources available to the family. The family often views treatment as culturally insensitive and, more important, as being generally ineffective. Blacks who are successful in addressing their alcohol or other drug problems often leave the Black community. Frequently, those who fail in treatment return to the community and serve as negative role models while criticizing the legitimacy of alcohol and other drug rehabilitation programs. So we were talking about 6 questions. Hold on. Lost my spot. 6 important questions concerning drug use. And so now we're on number 5. 5, are there functional tools to cope with stress? Methods for coping with stress are a culturally relevant issue. Historically, spirituality and religion have been major ways that people use to cope with stress. Work and exercise also play major roles in relieving stress and tension, as do leisure activities such as reading, listening to music, and going to the theater. Family and friends play key roles in helping people get through difficult times. Perhaps the most overlooked influence on our emotional lives is diet. Development of functional methods to cope with stress is generally considered necessary if people are to reach emotional maturity. Teenagers, for example, are often encouraged to participate in sports where they have a socially acceptable outlet for their aggressions while learning the concept of teamwork and good sportsmanship. But when black youth see a lot of drug dealers, gang members, and drug users in their inner city communities, they will, like their role models, learn to use or sell drugs to cope with their stress. When youths are not socialized to look to family, church, sports, or other healthy ways to cope with their stress, two things happen. A, they become more susceptible to using drugs as a coping mechanism. And B, their use of drugs further retards development of positive coping mechanisms. So I'm going to pause right there for a second. Now, I know some would say, oh, you can grow up in a family where you do have your family support and the church and this and that. You still go out and end up using drugs and this and this and that. And that is true. But I think what is being mentioned here is that the likelihood of that happening is probably far less greater. What am I trying to say? Probably not as likely to happen as it would in societies where children are growing up in the environment where they see all these drug dealers and drug users, and these are the people that are bringing money in the city. You can either go get pimped out, you can either go, be a drug dealer or a drug user to cope and get away from all of this stuff, but they seem to have it going on. So that can really change the course of your life. So yes, you can still get into that because you can grow out. I knew what to do, but I still definitely went to college and was drinking and smoking. I knew it wasn't necessarily healthy or considered something that my mom would be proud of, but I did it. So some things people are just going to try. But to become a full-blown drug addict or alcoholic is less likely to happen if you're not being surrounded by it, and also your genetic disposition, what runs in your family. But that's another story for another day. So, and number 6, are there functional rites of passages? We got to get back to rites of passages. Rites of passage are acts that indicate the progression from childhood to adulthood. We just let our kids just grow up. You just 10, 15, 16, we throw you a little 16, sweet 16 party. Welcome to 16. No. What are the steps that we are taking? What are some goals and things need to be learned and reached by the time you're a certain age? By the time you're 14, 15, 16. What things predicate you entering womanhood and manhood? A lot of us don't know. We ain't went through no rites of passage program. There's some sisters in my community that do something called the Healing Wheel, and they do rites of passages. And it's wow. That's amazing that resource is there, but that may not be in everybody's community, which is why we really need to tap back into who we are. Find our elders, find our tribes, find whatever and whoever have this information so that we can get on track, because we all the way out of line, out of order. Rites of passage are acts that indicate the progression from childhood to adulthood. Historically, there have been a number of these in the Black community. Graduating from high school or college, getting a driver's license, getting married, or serving in the military are all examples of rites of passage that exist in many cultures. When there is rejection of these rites of passages in the culture, others generally emerge to fill the void. Many of those that have arisen in the Black underclass are dysfunctional both to the individual and to the society. Some examples are participating in crime. The extent to which young Black people can successfully commit criminal acts often serves as a rite of passage and increases status in their peer group. All too often, crimes become a win-win situation to young Blacks. If an adolescent boy commits a crime without being arrested, he is viewed as having courage, intelligence, leadership ability, and tenacity. If he gets busted and does time well without becoming an informant, his stature also increases. Isn't that crazy, y'all? Now, what if that same energy to go out and commit a crime and do something crazy was used in, oh, can you shoot a bow and arrow? Can you hunt? Can you go get something in the woods if we had to be out in the wilderness for whatever reason? Could you hunt and kill and start a fire and cook a meal for us? That should be a rite of passage. Do you know how to survive? Do you know how to protect yourself? Do you know how to fix an open cut or wound? Not out here. Can you shoot up? Can you go do a B&E and potentially get caught and go to jail? And then you go to jail, and that's even more of a status like, oh, you a real nigga. What? Are we out of it? Like, that don't even make sense. Teenage sex and pregnancy. Many black teenage girls first engage in sex and then become pregnant in order to prove they are adults. After interviewing black teenage parents in Washington, D.C., Leon Dash reported that most young girls initially told him they're pregnant was an accident. Meaning I didn't intend for it to happen, but I obviously didn't know enough about my vagina and how semen and my ovaries work. I didn't plan. You did not plan it. You know, having sex can potentially lead to having a baby. And you're 14. So by the time he completed his second or third interviews with each respondent, all of them admitted it was no accident at all. Instead, the girls said the pregnancies were hoped for. They were often a way to gain status and attention. Use of alcohol and other drugs. Teenagers often brag about how many chemicals they can consume or who can get the best drugs. It is not unlike the game of chicken played in the 1950s when two speeding cars raced toward a cliff to see who would put the brakes on first. Kids today are playing emotional chicken with drugs. How close can they get to that emotional cliff with their chemical use and yet not go over the edge? The interaction of these three rites of passage is lethal, as we are now seeing with the rapid increase in cocaine-addicted babies. Alcohol and other drug treatment can also become a rite of passage. Adolescents are often showered with accolades for their recovery, paraded in front of community groups and town meetings, and patted on the back for doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. They recite in vivid detail their exploits while using chemicals and their experiences in treatment. While much of the attention given to recovering teens is positive, the process has the potential of appearing very attractive to the young, non-addicted person who is looking for a way to get attention and prestige. Many black adolescents are addicted to a criminal, hustling lifestyle as much as to chemicals. This needs to be addressed in treatment. One of the often debated but positive aspects of therapeutic communities as opposed to traditional 30-day treatment programs is that they tend to be more intense, rigorous, and confrontational. This provides the drama and passion on which many addicts thrive and may be necessary in rehabilitative treatment. The line between appropriate and inappropriate drug use. When the line between appropriate and inappropriate drug use is clear, it stops some people from approaching or crossing the line. For example, when there's a no smoking sign in a room, people generally do not smoke. While this, establishing a clear line, may not prevent chemical dependency, it tends to prevent chemical abuse and, more importantly, chemical-related problem events. One of the most significant benefits of having a clear distinction between what is appropriate and what is inappropriate behavior is that it makes it easier for people to identify chemical abuse early in the degenerative process of addiction. When the line is vague or unclear, it tends to enable chemical abuse. The effectiveness of intervention efforts is moving in two opposite directions. Because of increased attention, knowledge, and resources, many persons with chemical abuse problems are diagnosed very early in their addiction. For other groups, disproportionately minorities, chemical dependency problems are diagnosed very late. There are a number of reasons why Black people access treatment later. One is that Black people in general have a higher tolerance for emotional pain. Racism and discrimination produce a toughening in Blacks that allow them to cope with emotional pain. This quality, however, can work against them when they become chemically dependent. A high tolerance for emotional pain often retards diagnosis, intervention, and treatment. Chemical dependency often has to progress to a later stage in the Black community before action is taken, which is also why the Black community is seen as an enabling community. A second reason for accessing treatment later is that most of what Black people see in their community are the failures from treatment not the successes. Recovering blacks often move out of the community, whereas those who fail generally return. The resulting impression is that treatment doesn't work. A third reason blacks access treatment later is the lack of resources to access treatment. Black people are less likely to have private insurance that allows a variety of treatment options. Finally, the lack of a clear distinction between appropriate and inappropriate drug use in the black community allows the disease to progress faster and further without significant social sanctions. When there is a clear distinction between appropriate and inappropriate use, there is more pressure on people who are inappropriately using drugs to change behaviors. Chemical dependency is a degenerative disease. The fact that black people get into treatment later in the progression of the disease is significant for a variety of reasons. Later entry into treatment often means entering via the court system as opposed to self-referral or intervention by family or employer. Later entry lowers the probability for successful treatment and long-term recovery. The alcoholic or other addict who comes to treatment late in the progression of the disease is less likely to have an intact, supportive family or job, both of which are important predicators of recovery success. Later entry is costly since inpatient treatment is usually required. Later entry increases the likelihood of diseases or physical malfunctions caused or exasperated by chemical dependency. There is an important distinction between rehabilitation and habilitation. Rehabilitation assumes the existence of positive norms and values that the client has strayed from and needs to return to. The goal of counseling is to help clients rediscover those positive norms and values. For some people, rehabilitation is an inappropriate goal because they have never learned the positive norms and values. These clients require habilitation or the development of positive norms and values. This is a much more difficult task. Our entire chemical dependency treatment system is built on the assumption of rehabilitation, not habilitation. Clients now come to treatment either very early in their chemical abuse or else very, very late. The effects of this reality have the potential to significantly impact the entire chemical dependency treatment system in this country. Well, that was chapter 2, and that said a lot. It asked a lot of great questions. I'll go back through and read them real quick. 6 important questions concerning drug use. 1, what chemicals are legitimate to use? 2, has the culture, community, or family established a context for chemical use? 3, are the cultural institutions that can effectively establish and communicate alcohol? Are there cultural institutions that can effectively establish and communicate alcohol and other drug use rules? 4, are there clear cultural, community, or family systems of accountability? 5, are there functional tools to cope with stress? And 6, are there functional rites of passages? So I really like this chapter, and it really spoke to, again, the family and what are we doing amongst ourselves to help prevent chemical dependency from getting too far, because it sounds like a lot of us don't get treatment until we're too far gone. And then I like how he ended the chapter with saying that a lot of the programs we have for different people that are chemically dependent is rehabilitation programs, when rehabilitation is helping that person get back to their positive values and norms. But some people grew up not having these positive values and norms, so they can't rehabilitate. They have to habilitate. They have to learn what positive values and norms are to overcome. This is a powerful book. And man, we got a lot of accountability that we need to take as a people and individuals, and we have to find other positive, healthy ways to reduce stress and to alleviate our stress. So that's the path and the journey that I'm on. So I'm going to continue to share. I hope you all are receiving something from these readings, and I appreciate y'all for tuning in. I will talk to you soon. Peace, love, and light.